Good evening, good evening. Welcome to this month's live stream Q&A with me, Tim Box. I'm a mind coach. I'm an anxiety therapist, remedial hypnotist. I run this channel all about anxiety relief. You may have seen my TED Talk, which is entitled How to Stop Feeling Anxious About Anxiety. You might have read my book called Clear Your Head, which is all about living life without anxiety getting in the way. He says, trying to remember the subtitles of all the things he's done. Or you might have just found this channel and thought, oh, who's this guy now? What's he talking about? But every Friday, every month, I do a Friday evening live stream. Friday evening in the UK, because that's where I'm based. Don't know where you are. But if you're in the room, say hi and let me know where you are. And what we do is I answer your questions about anxiety, and hopefully we all work a little bit together to get a little bit more control of anxiety and how we feel and how our emotions respond, all that sort of stuff. So the format here, if you're new, the way it goes is I have had questions left on my videos. Some of those questions I answer in the comments. Some, to be honest, I don't get round to. Apologies if I haven't got round to answering yours. And some of them, I think, you know what, that probably warrants a slightly broader explanation. So I'll save it for these live Q&As. So I've got some questions that are just literally, I've loaded them up into the system so that I can just go through them. Then what I'm going to do, once I've gone through them, I will then go to the comments and I will answer you guys' questions as they come in. I'll do my very best to. So yeah, let's get going. Good evening, Salvo. Good evening, Ecumes. I bet I've said that wrong, haven't I? And good evening, Susan. Good. You're in Bolton. Not too far away then. Well, certainly UK anyway. Okay. So obviously straight up front, it's a bad hair day for me. Let's be transparent there. Let's not try and hide that. But it's Friday and here we are. So what can I tell you? It's been a week. To be fair, it hasn't been that much of a week. I've kind of just, skipped merrily through the week, seeing clients, running some trainings, that sort of stuff. Right. Anyway, let's get on with it. I've already digressed. You will find this if you haven't been on my lives before. I can go off on a tangent. So I would say stop me, but I'm not looking at the comments right now. I'm looking at the questions that I've loaded up. Right. Let me go with this question. Apologies, I don't have the names of who asked me these questions loaded up. I've just literally loaded up the comments because you get a sort of a character limit on each banner. So I figured I'll just answer, and if it's your question, great. If it's not, hopefully you can benefit from the answer as well. Right, you can find everywhere that to make your anxiety wind down, to make your mental health better, the best remedy is a good night's sleep. Yeah, there's lots of that is talked about online, certainly. If you don't sleep, you'll have none of those. You can even die from a stroke, etc. That makes my anxiety worse to the point that I'm afraid of going to bed and being unable to fall asleep. Right. That's a very common issue. One of the things that when people see me and they're working, like deliberately working on sleep issues, a lot of the time they kind of have what we might call sleep anxiety, where they're so anxious about going to sleep that they've created this effect where they're stressed to the point where we can't drop off. Okay. So the thing to remember here about sleep is that sleep is something we don't have to learn to do and we don't have to try to do. In fact, the harder we try, sleep is one of those things that has that law of reverse effect attached to it. The harder we try to sleep, the more awake we make ourselves as we try harder and harder. And that's because we produce cortisol, which is basically the chemical in our body that counteracts sleep. It's the stress hormone. Whereas melatonin that we produce when it gets dark and when it gets nighttime, that's what puts us to sleep. But of course, melatonin is counteracted by cortisol. So what happens is the harder we try and the more we're stressing about, I've got to get to sleep, I've got to get to sleep, the more we create this effect of being more and more wide awake. So what we would need to do here in this instance is calm that fear that I'm doing myself irreparable damage by not sleeping. And this is the thing I would say here, right, is that stuff about you do yourself damage if you don't sleep, and you don't get the benefit of good mental health if you don't sleep. That's generally aimed at people who deliberately, habitually, and regularly sacrifice sleep to hustle, get more work done, or to stay up all night gaming or watching videos. It's not aimed at people who are just, I'm struggling to sleep. Yeah, because we all struggle to sleep sometimes. And we all, at some point, go through difficult phases of sleep as well. It doesn't mean we're going to do ourselves irreparable damage, or we're going to miss sleep for a few months, where we're struggling, and then suddenly we're going to have a stroke, before the end of the year. That isn't how it works. That's aimed at people who are living lives where they're deliberately not getting enough sleep because they just don't see the value of it. All of that advice is saying to people, here's what you can consciously do to live a healthier life. And that is put enough time in your schedule to get enough sleep, and enough rest probably is the better way of putting it, rather than actual sleep. Yeah. Sleep is great, but if you can't get sleep, get rest, because that's nearly as good, but don't feel like that advice is meant to ring alarm bells in your head, because it takes a long period of deliberately sacrificing sleep for you to really do yourself damage. And when you actually get back to prioritizing sleep, putting enough time in your diary to sleep for a good amount of time, then what happens is your body does what it's best at, which is it heals. Yeah, the reason people are saying that you want to, it increases your mental acuities and it maintains your mental health, is because what they're saying is a lot of your issues, you might think they have really difficult solutions. Maybe we're depressed and we can't see a way out of our depression. Maybe we're chronically anxious and we can't ever imagine not feeling anxious. A lot of these things are because we've been given a perspective where we haven't slept long enough, and as a result, our perception has got a negative bias on it, because we're exhausted and we feel unable to cope with life's challenges. All that advice is saying is, look, the good news is that as much as it might sound like the sort of advice your mum would give you when you're a youngster, a lot of life's issues in terms of what goes on with us can really be aided and mitigated by a good night's sleep. Yeah, then that advice isn't there to scare you. It's there to say, hey, look, good news. There's a simpler fix to a lot of what's going on up here than you might think. Yeah. So if you're not sleeping, if you're laying there at night and you're not sleeping, don't worry about it, because you're not doing the damage that certain articles would be saying, would have you believe you're doing. Yeah. And I hope that makes some sort of sense. And I hope that answer is of value there. Okay. I'm just going to say hello to some people that have come in the room. Hello, Matt. Hey, Stacey. Jerry. I was trying to make that complicated, wasn't I? Diane and Mehmet. Good evening, everyone. As I say, I'm going to get to all your comments at some point, but I'm just going to go through these questions that I've got here on the system that I've loaded up. This is a good one I want to talk about, because this kind of is counterpoint to what I've just said here. It's nice to rest for 8 hours, but what about when you're worrying about not being able to take care of your family the next day? So this was left on a video about, it was one of my Q&As. It might have been last month's Q&A, where I was talking about sleep and the value. Instead of thinking about sleep, just think about, hey, let's rest for 8 hours. Let's kind of say, even if I don't fall unconscious, at least I'm resting in a dark space for 8 hours. Isn't that lovely? Isn't that enjoyable? Yeah. And obviously there's a comment about, but what if you're worrying about not being able to take care of your family because I'm not sleeping, I won't be able to manage all of this. Yeah. Right. First thing to remember here is that you always have managed. Yeah. That's probably, we fear that we won't be able to cope. Yeah. It might be a struggle if we haven't slept very well, but we will get through it. Because this person who's written this question, I'm guessing every single day of your life since your kids have been born and you've had your family, you have taken care of your family because they're all still here. Yeah. Or you've done what you needed to do. Or maybe certain elements of taking care of them, they were able to do themselves. It's really easy if we overpressure ourselves, if we feel like we have to achieve a certain standard, fulfill a certain amount of obligation. It's easy to put pressure on ourselves, isn't it? The other thing I would say as well is when we do this thing of, I didn't sleep at all last night. Yeah, you did. You just didn't realize you slept. Okay. So many times I've spoken to people and they're like, I haven't slept at all. And when you push them, so like, wow, you were conscious for 8 hours constantly. And then they realize, well, no, I wasn't, was I? I was sort of drifting in. I wasn't getting deep sleep. I wasn't getting satisfying sleep that made me feel fully rested. But yeah, I was sleeping. Because that's what we do. Yeah. And I think as well, so I'll tell you a story here about how our worries, yeah, in terms of worrying interrupting our sleep cycle. So I had this thing, it was about a year ago now, and I had an issue going on, and it was doing that thing that issues do. It was keeping me awake at night. So I was laying there at night, and I was like, oh God, what am I going to do about this thing? What should I do about that? And I decided to do that thing where I like, right, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bloody write down the action I'm going to take tomorrow so that I can just get it out of my mind. Okay. My subconscious will say, right, okay, we've taken action. We'll take care of it in the morning. So I wrote something down. I turned my little lamp on by the side of the bed, wrote something down, rolled over. And fortunately that helped me get back to sleep. Yeah. And I'm not saying, hey, there's the solution, guys. But what I am saying is I woke up the next day and I looked at what I'd written, and it was absolute rubbish. Not only that, but the thing that I was writing down to do to as a countermeasure to was completely nothing I needed to worry about at all. All that was happening was my fears were being amplified because they were in the middle of the night. Yeah, the parts of your mind that are awake in the middle of the night are inevitably the parts that are fearful, the parts that are feeling a little bit less empowered. All the parts of your mind that are comfortable, are happy, they've all gone to sleep. You know what I mean? So if you're like got a gang of people in there, you know, so you guys that follow the channel know I talk about the captain and the crew of the ship. Captain being your conscious bit of you, the crew being all the parts of your subconscious. Yeah, the only crew members that are awake in the middle of the night are the ones that are worried about stuff. The crew members that are feeling empowered, able to cope with life and able to deal with challenges, they've all gone to sleep because they know it's nighttime and it's time to rest. So in the middle of the night, all we've got focus on is these I don't know, the worried scenarios, the stuff that we don't actually need to focus on, because when we wake up in the morning and the rest of our crew wake up, we're like, yeah, why were you worried about that? That's fine. You know, and this is what I'm saying here, is that worried about not being able to take care of your family the next day. I bet you do take care of your family every day. I bet you manage absolutely admirably well, you know, and maybe you might not, maybe the only thing you need to amend is to give yourself more credit for what you achieve. Yeah. I hope that's of value. I hope that makes sense, that answer. Also, just as a very simple thing, a very basic thing, do your best to encourage your mind to focus only on the things you can do something about, the things you have control of. There's a lot of things in life you have no control of. You could argue everything except you and your own responses you have no direct control over. So if we're laying in bed worrying about stuff, all we're really doing is thinking about things we have no control over. Yeah, worrying, if you call it worrying, by definition, that means you're describing your mind thinking about something you cannot directly influence at this time. That's it. That's what worrying means. So if you find yourself doing something you would label as worrying, that immediately invalidates it as a strategy, an emotional strategy. Remind yourself, hey, look, best version of me to face tomorrow, completely unprepared yet completely rested version of me. So let's just switch off for the night. I won't come up with any solutions right now, you know. Okay, let's move on. Okay, I suffer from bad anxiety and very sore legs. I feel I'm falling forward, and I fell the other day. I'm sorry to hear that. I've had many meds, but nothing helps. I don't feel my doctor is listening to me. What can I do? Okay, so this whole thing about the doctor not listening to us, I've seen a lot of clients who feel that way. They're dealing with health anxiety, and they go to their doctor and they talk about things, and the doctor, it feels like the doctor's dismissed them. I hear that a lot. Okay, now there are certain things in our life that we do quite easily as individuals. You know, you probably, whatever job you do, you probably go to work every day and you do it without pretty much thinking about it. You know, it's pretty tedious. Now you know how to perform your role. You do that, yeah, and you don't really probably show outward concern about those jobs that you do day to day. Yeah. Now, the good thing to remember here is that the doctor, that's what he does day to day, is that he listens to people's issues and concerns and their symptoms, and he decides on the appropriate action. Yeah. And 99 times out of 100, the doctor is pretty accurate because, yeah, you know what? He studied for years and he does this every day. Now, when we go to the doctor and the doctor dismisses this as there's nothing medical, there's no medical problem here, they're not doing that because they haven't listened. Most of the time they're doing that because why would they show concern to something they know is of no concern or needn't be of any concern? So I would encourage people when they go to the doctor to get medical stuff sorted and get looked into, recognize that there's a reason why the doctor is there, because he's an expert in this. So listen to the doctor when they tell you what is going on. Yeah. Now, the other thing I would say is that it's really common for people when they go to the doctor, they have medical tests done and the doctor says, there's nothing medical wrong. This is probably just anxiety. Now, oftentimes people mishear that and they come away believing they've tested positive for anxiety, the illness called anxiety. Yeah. And I would encourage you to recognize that when the doctor says that, what he's saying is, guess what? When we feel highly anxious, there are a lot of physical sensations that manifest, especially when we hyperfixate on certain specific sensations. We do that thing where we're looking at it through a microscope now. We've turned a speck of dust into a monster. Yeah. And that's what happens here. We have certain responses that we might latch onto. So the idea of falling forward, it's not uncommon for us to feel dizzy and unbalanced when it comes to anxiety, because we're in a fight or flight mode. If we're in a highly anxious state, we're in fight or flight, and there's this thing, this vasodilation thing where the blood vessels constrict to move the blood around to the major organs and where they need to go, because we're going into fight or flight. And it can leave us feeling lightheaded, dizzy, unbalanced. Okay, now if we then start to fixate on that symptom, he says in inverted commas, because it's not a symptom, symptoms mean illness, it's a sensation, yeah. Then we might find ourselves noticing it and then getting more anxious, and as a result, creating more of that effect. So my advice here would be to accept how you feel and accept that it's simply a natural byproduct of feeling really anxious. If you can accept that there's nothing meaningful about that, as in threatening about that, then you will start to come down out of the threat response. And as a result, all of those sensations will start to diminish. I think that a lot of people find themselves in that situation where they feel like they're spiraling and there's no hope, and it feels like there's no way the other side of this. And that attitude, I say attitude as if you're choosing to adopt an attitude, but that version of reality that's playing in our mind, that story we're telling us, is what keeps us in that loop. If we can recognize that, okay, what I'm experiencing are very natural physical sensations associated with being highly anxious, then maybe I can accept that. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with me. Yeah, it just means my mind is creating a lot of anxiety. And anxiety, remember, let's go back to basics here, is the emotion your mind uses to flag up importance. It's your mind saying, pay attention to this, it's important. Okay? When that thing that your mind regards as important contains some perceived level of threat, it stops being anxiety, it becomes fear. And then it kind of becomes visceral, it becomes physical. The sensations come with it. So really, the issue is not an anxiety issue, it's a fear issue. You're fearing the feeling of falling forwards. You're fearing the sore legs. You're fearing the bad anxiety. And that's creating a fear response in your body. Yeah. Recognizing this and understanding this helps you stop labeling it as a malfunction or an illness or a problem. Yeah. I hope that makes sense. Anyone that's watching this, by the way, and it's your question I'm answering, whether it's on playback or whatever, just, let me know if these answers are being of value to you. Good evening, Des. Good evening, Christine. Good evening, Fatu. Again, I will apologize for any pronunciations that are way off the mark, because that happens. If you are on the live, by the way, and you're not subscribed to the channel, and whatever, if the advice I'm giving is of value or is resonating with you, please subscribe to the channel, because I put videos up every week about anxiety. This week's video is about anxiety during the winter months, because somebody in the members area was asking about how we manage anxiety during the winter months. So I did a video on that, because I thought, that's worth actually breaking down a little bit more detail. Also, members area is available if again you want slightly closer attention and weekly live streams from me. Right. Next one. How did you get over your anxiety? Okay. people do ask me this a lot. I will do a video on this, I think, because although I've spoken about it, I haven't necessarily broken it down in detail. If you've watched the TED Talk, I talk about three things. Firstly, refusing to accept that I was ill, as in anxiety is not an illness, it's an emotion. The second thing is listening to what my anxiety was telling me. And the third thing was being kind to myself. Yeah. Now let me break this down. The first one, it wasn't a deliberate choice to refuse that I was ill. Basically what happened was I was really, really socially anxious around the time of my, I would say about 15, 16 to kind of 21, 22, maybe longer than that, actually, when I think about it. But the thing is, at that time, I didn't know anxiety could be labeled as a disorder or something like that. So I never went to the doctor for feeling anxious. I just thought I was a bit pants. I was a bit crap because I was really anxious about what everyone thought of me and socially awkward and things like that. So it was something that I just very much saw as a weakness in me, but not something that would be labeled as an illness or anything like that. So I never was given the framework of a disordered anxiety response. I never got to refer to myself as suffering with some condition. So as a result of that, I never had a limited framework by which to operate. I realized that, hey, if I can get more confidence, if I can change the way I think, feel and respond, then I can get the other side of this. I think my sort of bugbear with the whole anxiety disorder label is that it gives you something else to feel anxious about. It kind of fence posts your options and gives you something that you're now going to be monitoring for. Is my anxiety flaring up? Am I having a bad anxiety day? Am I past my anxiety, or have I relapsed into, that kind of thing? So I think I was fortunate. I never got that framework. Then I recognized I was anxious for reasons. The reasons being that I was very concerned about what other people thought of me. And I know that was because I experienced a modicum of bullying when I was at school in my younger years. And I know that was impactful on me because I was the youngest child. And whenever I opened my mouth to say anything, more often than not, it was stupid. and mum and dad might have laughed, or my sister might have laughed at me, and I was carrying that silly little thing where I thought, people could laugh at me if I opened my mouth. And then when I got bullied at school for a period, not massive. I'm not saying I was, victimized like habitually for years, but I went through a period of bullying that impacted heavily on me because my mind kind of had that validated then. Oh yeah, there's negative consequences to being seen and heard. Keep your head down. Don't go into social situations. People will judge you, and there's real negative consequences to being judged. And so I think recognizing that was the thing that needed to change. And ultimately I needed to discover that what other people think of me doesn't actually impact negatively on me. Yeah. And again, I think I was fortunate because I came out of that period where I was at school and then at university, and that little microcosmic world where you have a number of options about who you hang out with and who you can interact with. It wasn't like I've got to make everyone like me because there's only a limited amount of people. I suddenly moved from the educational environment to the big wide world where you get to choose who you hang out with. And if you don't like the people you are hanging out with because they don't seem to like you, guess what? There's 8 billion other people to choose from. So you don't need to make everyone like you anymore. And as a result of that, where you're not in an enclosed environment, if somebody doesn't like you, that isn't going to drastically affect your path to happiness, because now I can simply take myself out of the situation. It's not like I'm in a classroom where I'm like, everyone in this class hates me, I'm going to go somewhere else. No, you can't, because you're in the classroom. That's where you're told to be. In life, it's like, hey, I can now go where I want and see who I want and meet who I want and hang out with who I want. So if the people that I'm currently with are not to my liking, I have 1,000,001 options instead. Yeah, I don't need to make the people in front of me like me. I don't need to be worried if they don't, because I choose who I want to be. And as a result, my path to happiness. So that's what helped me get over anxiety. And then also being kind to myself. I'm a big believer. If you beat yourself up, you just end up beaten. Yeah. And I look back and I think, yep, there was a part of me that realized I was a much slower developer than I wanted to be when it came socially speaking. And if there was a word to describe me as a youth, I would say naive. Yeah, to the point of where I would embarrass myself with things that I said and did. I would upset others with things that I said and did, just because of my naivety. But what am I going to do about that? Have a go at myself because I hadn't learned life's lessons as fast as other people? You don't know what lessons are there to learn until you learn them. All you can do is just get out there and do the learning as it comes to you. So those three things are how I think I got over anxiety. But these days, you know, if you ask me what's the best thing you can do, is recognize that you will feel anxious every day, because anxiety is a marker for importance. That's it. And every day we have important things to focus on. If we can accept that it's okay to feel anxious, then we don't have to fear feeling anxious anymore. We don't have to get rid of the feeling of anxiety to feel safe, because it doesn't threaten our safety. Yeah. So there's that element I would add to it as well. Right. I hope that when I do the video of that, I'll put that in a much more cohesive manner that makes a lot more sense, I'm sure. Hopefully, anyway. Christ. Right. There's a couple more. Is nausea a part of anxiety? Yes, it can be, absolutely, because when we go into high anxiety and that becomes fear, then the fight or flight response, many people experience stomach issues from anxiety. And because your body's getting ready to move and jump and leap and fight and all that sort of thing, sometimes it feels the need to get rid of the ballast, you know, so either direction. So yeah, nausea can be a sensation that comes with anxiety. But that's okay, because it passes, doesn't it? Like all feelings. I've got a video on the channel about stomach issues and nausea. Is I could talk about that. I think it is anxiety related stomach issues, I think, is the video. But there's a video on the channel about that. That will go into it in more detail. I'm struggling with anxiety. I've had many meds, but nothing helps. That was that. I copied and pasted that into the other question because it was the same person asking the question. So yeah, see the answer above for that one. Right. Okay. That's all the questions that I had loaded into the system. So what I'll do, I will now start to go through your comments. If you're just arriving, by the way, in the room, you've joined my monthly live anxiety Q&A. My name is Tim Box. I'm an anxiety specialist. I see clients one-to-one every day. That's my job. I gave a TED talk about it. I wrote a book about it, and I have an outlook on anxiety that hopefully is worth sharing. Hopefully, you guys tell me. If you like what I'm talking about, you can subscribe to the channel. If you like this video, you can click like. I've got to do all the YouTube stuff now. And if you want to get a little bit more close-up advice and help, then the members area of the channel is where I put all of the outlined anxiety-related content, and I do a weekly members live stream. So the sort of thing I'm doing here, this is monthly, but I do it every week for the members of the channel. So feel free to join the membership channel, the membership side of the channel, if you're getting something from this. It's about £9 a month, I think. Right, let's get into these. Salvo, good evening, my friend. Hi, Tim. I've been feeling amazing. My anxiety response is probably at 1 out of 10. The last thing I'm working on is my jelly leg response. So this demands a bit of backstory, doesn't it? So Salvo is in the members area, and he's been using the control system, which is is my system of change that is based on eyes open, non-trance hypnotherapy. And it's a method that you can apply to yourself. And Salvo's got very good at applying it. There's a tutorial video in the members area how to apply it. And yeah, been working on getting out there and getting on with life, isn't it, and enjoying it. And that was the thing, wasn't it? The slight jelly leg response, as you describe it. That was the last bit there. Recently, I noticed from 0 to 10, it's around 4 out of 10. So I said it's not a. Hang on, that's the next one, isn't it? It's not a rollback. It's likely a part of my mind uncertain about turning it to 0. I'm unsure which part to address or why it's still there. Hang on. I know that this response can go off since it has no sense to exist. Any tips? I even tried to talk to the part to put it to 0. It said yes, but probably I may have done it consciously since it didn't work. Okay, so this conversation you're having with your subconscious, Salvo, the first thing I would say, do you need to get rid of it to be safe? Okay, a lot of the time people try and get rid of every little trace of what they've had going on. Yeah. And the reason that they're noticing it, the reason it remains is because they're really, really analyzing if it's still there, because they want every little trace of it gone. But in most instances, if it continued, if it perpetuated, it wouldn't in any way threaten you and it wouldn't in any way stop you. The only reason it's stopping you or in any way halting you right now is because you're taking the time to analyze whether it's there or not. And you might find that it's you asking that part to stop doing it that's just creating the hyper analysis of whether it's still there or not. You know, you might find that it's just one of those things that you cannot be bothered about. Yeah, and not bother with. I think we got to remember that a lot of the times the things we don't like about anxiety are perpetuated when we try and get rid of them completely. And we're only trying to get rid of them completely, not because they're still at a bothersome level, but because they're part of what was previously bothersome to us. You know, and I've said this many times to people. Remember, you were always anxious. Yeah, everyone since birth was able to have a response about, hang on, that's important. I need to pay attention to it. And that's what anxiety does. But we just didn't notice it because it wasn't flagged up as an issue. No part of our mind was saying that anxiety sensation or that anxiety thought is threatening to us, is a problem. As soon as we say, oh, hang on, that actually isn't a problem, is it? I can live my life perfectly happily, even if I still had that thought, I still had that sensation, because it doesn't in any way debilitate me. It's only me paying attention to it that stops me. You know, it's like, I've just reminded of this phrase that somebody said, it's like stopping the train to spit out the window, which is a really weird phrase, but it just came into my mind. You know, it's like you don't have to stop the train to analyze anything, because the thing that you're analyzing isn't going to stop the train moving if it just wants to keep going anyway. You know, I don't know if that's of help. I feel like if we're going to talk about specific control system techniques and conversations, we'll save that for the members area, because it will make much more sense to all you guys in the members area than it will just to people that are just tuning into the live for the first time. And, you know, maybe this isn't the space to be talking about conversations with your own subconscious and stuff like that. But, you know, I hope that makes sense anyway. Acumes is a question. How to work a 9 to 5 normally? When I get anxiety episodes, I feel scared to go to work because I feel that I'm trapped there and can't go to my safe place when needed. I always take sick leave. From Estonia originally, right now in Australia. Blimey, what time is it in Australia? Okay, here's the thing. Safe space, right? What happens? We feel anxious. I did a video on this just the other day, actually, so it's fresh in my mind. We feel anxious, and then we run to our safe space. So we get home or something, and we feel okay. And then we notice that, okay, when I'm at home, I'm fine. It's when I go out that I feel anxious, and that just now amplifies that response. There's a bit of our mind that is getting validation that yeah, being at home is where we're safe. Yeah, because, you know, and even the thought of going out makes us anxious. So yeah, home, that's the safe space. That's where we need to stay. And as a result, we just end up hibernating. And so what you're saying here is that when you feel, you know, a little bit anxious, you're scared to go to work because you're away from your safe space. But all that's happened here is we've mistakenly thought that it was getting back to our safe space that saved us, that stopped the anxiety. When in truth, you know what the better thing would have been? Way back in the day when we started to feel anxious, or whenever this whole thing started, the better thing would have been if we couldn't have got home, if we just couldn't get home in that period, because then we would have noticed that it passes anyway, whether we get home or not. So that's what I would say, is recognize that this safe space, it's an imagined safe space. Your safe space is actually you. Yeah. Every feeling that you have, anxiety episode or anxiety sensation or a high anxiety phase or whatever we want to call it, anxiety attack, God, it's all transient. It all is in the moment and then it passes. Oftentimes, the only thing that perpetuates it is this idea that we need to get somewhere or get with some other person, get someone else's help. Otherwise, we won't be safe. It will just, we'll die, or it will get worse. It will never stop. The fact is, anything that you feel will pass. Always remember that. It's not because you're at your safe space. That would be my answer to that one. Hope that makes some degree of sense. Don't what was it I said in the video, actually? When you write something out, and that's how I want to say it. It's okay to lean on things like people that can help you and to feel better at home than you do outside of home. Just don't confuse that as the source of your strength, because it isn't. You get past this stuff because of you. You got a response there. Okay, so I should just face my fear and prove to myself that I don't need a safe place for it to pass. Pretty much, yeah. That's certainly. You've put it this way: you've no need to fear going to work, I would suggest. Because, put it this way, right? There will be times when we go and do something and yet, you know what? It freaked us out and we felt really anxious. Okay? There will be times when that happens. But recognize that ends. So even if you go to work, face the fear, as we say, and you feel really anxious, recognize that passes, Accept that, okay, I'm feeling that way. That's okay. And also remember this as well. We sometimes think this is anxiety when it isn't. Yeah. You all the physical sensations that come with anxiety, we think, oh, this is I'm anticipating feeling, whatever the sensations are that come with it for you. But they could also be the same sensations that you would have for waking up and getting on with the day and going into work and sort of going into battle, if you like, putting my work face on and getting in there and doing it. There's a certain amount of adrenaline that comes with approaching your day-to-day tasks. Don't confuse that with, oh, here comes my anxiety, because that thought is what makes it worse, not the situation itself. I hope that helps. Right. Okay. I'm going to pause because I've spilt my tea slightly. So always have kitchen roll available. That's an advice. That's general life advice. Never go anywhere without your kitchen roll. Talking about a safe space. Right. Moving on. Evening, Tim. Thank you for your video on the winter anxiety and how to get through it. Oh, no, you're very welcome, Matt. I hope it was of value to you. Hope it did what it needed to do. Stacy. Hi, Tim. You've probably been asked before, but when I feel a spasm in my body, how do I stop the negative thought cycle kicking in, telling me something is wrong, even though I've been told there isn't? Well, Stacy, it's about whether you believe there isn't. Yeah. It's one thing saying I've been told there isn't. So presumably you're saying you've had medical stuff done. Doctors said, no, don't worry. There's nothing to fear. Well, I think a lot of the time understanding is the antidote. You may have heard me say that phrase before if you've been on the channel at all. And certainly people that have been on the lives would have heard me say it, I think. But understanding that, muscle spasms, it's all part of the fight or flight. Yeah, your muscles are activating, if you like. And also in some instances cramping up as well. I mean, we've all had that thing, haven't we, where we've been really like super nervous, like really, hyper super nervous about something. And it's almost like our muscles are firing, independently without, not of our own volition, almost uncontrollably. And this is the thing you've got to remember, is that all of this stuff is natural. This doesn't indicate that there's a problem. It won't stop you living your life either. And, probably, again, you notice it more than other people as well. All those sorts of cliches that we say but are true. Yeah. So just recognize that at the moment, what's going on, you're experiencing a sensation, and a bit of your mind is saying something must be wrong. And as a result, that message is being fed back into your mind, and you're then tensing. You get tension as a result of that. So you have this loop. So you do your best as you can to interrupt that cycle and recognize, well, actually, there is nothing wrong. There's no physical sensation that's the problem. There's no physical or medical problem. Yeah, if you've, as you say, you've been told that there isn't, great. There's no medical problem. So I don't need to worry about this. This is just me being overly tense about something. But that's not a malfunction either, is it? You know, is there anyone in this room that hasn't been overly tense about something in their life, overly anxious about a situation in their life, knowing they shouldn't be that anxious and yet they are? You know, that's not a sign of disorder. That's a sign of being human and giving a shit about you and your journey. So treat it more as a, yep, just confirming I am still alive. That's good. That's a positive, you know. But I hope that's of value, that answer. Jerry, hi Tim. I have the impression that one of the functions of anxiety is to make us believe that something not only might happen but will definitely happen, just in case. My problem is that I keep falling for it. What can I do to stop believing it? Right. Think of those thoughts not as absolutes. Hang on. The anxiety's function is to flag up importance, right? It is not an absolute. It is not, this is definitely going to happen. Think of it more like a part of you that is the frightened child. He said with trepidation that people are going to confuse this for inner child work now, which I'm not a practitioner of, but this idea that you basically have a part of you that's saying, are we okay? Are we safe? Now, at the moment, you're responding to that with, why? What's wrong? What's going on? Yeah. So you're having a thought, and then your response to that thought is to validate that thought. Yeah. Think of it like a child that comes up to the parent and says, "Mummy, I can't sleep. There's a monster under the bed." And the mum goes, "You're joking." Yeah. And picks the child up, runs out of the house, slams the door, calls the police. There's a monster in my, you know, that doesn't happen, does it? Because the mum knows, I don't think there is a monster. Okay. So how do you stop falling for it? How do you stop thinking there's a monster under the bed? Because you know there isn't. Yeah. And our job isn't to tell the child either to just shut up and go back to sleep, because that part of us would still be afraid then, wouldn't it? Our job is to say, look, okay, I get it. You're a kid. You're scared. You think this not. Let's be the parent to ourselves here and say, look, don't worry. It's all safe. It's all good. Yeah. Your mind's job, by the way, is to tell you all the things that might go wrong. Yeah. Literally. Yeah. Your subconscious that is doing loads of things in the background outside of your conscious awareness. One of the things it does is formulate every possible negative possibility of every move you make. There are millions of things going on in the background, just on the down low, on the low burner. Yeah. Because you need to know. For example, I saw a client once who was saying, I think I might be suicidal, Tim. I was like, what do you mean? And he said, well, I walked over a bridge the other day and I imagined jumping off the bridge. I said, oh, did you want to jump off the bridge? And no, it terrified me. I've no interest in committing suicide. Yeah. And all that was happened there was that to know not to jump over that rail, that person's mind has to contemplate the consequences of jumping over the rail. Now, 99 times out of 100, those thoughts don't come into your awareness because they're discarded in the background. But when we're in an anxious state of mind, and when we're maybe questioning our own process, a bit of our mind might say, oh, this thought is a bit of a scary one. Should I be bringing this into should I be showing the captain this thought? Because we're a bit worried about these thoughts at the moment, aren't we? And so they come forward into our awareness. And suddenly we're freaking out that they've come forward into our, what does this mean? Is this actually going to happen? Am I going to do this? You know? And at the end of the day, all it is your mind doing its job of going through the possibilities. So how do you stop falling for it? Recognize it's not a statement. It's a question. Are we okay? Yeah, we're fine. Yeah. Hope that makes sense. I'm just going to scroll down. Okay. Right. Oh, there's a lot of comments that I haven't gone through yet. Hang on. I'm gonna end this live on the 60-minute mark, by the way. So I'm going to try and get through all of these. Hi, Diane. I think I did say hi, Diane, didn't I? Sorry. Hey, Tim. Evening from Turkey. Wow, what an international audience we have tonight. I just want to thank you for amazing videos and guidance to understand what anxiety is. I just changed my perception. I'm feeling fixed right now. You're the man. Feeling fixed. I would say, so I used to ask the question of my clients, how will you know when you're fixed? Because it was one of the intake questions that we asked. And then a client said to me, well, I'm not broken. And I was like, oh yeah, you're absolutely right. So I like you saying feeling great, but just remember, we were never broken. Okay. And that is important, I feel, even though it seems really pedantic, doesn't it? We make it being really picky, but I'm really pleased to hear how you're doing. I'm so glad the video's been a help as well. Just that's made my day. On a different day, that would get me emotional. So I'm going to move on before I become emotional. Des, can you talk about Claire Weeks? Only very briefly, because I don't know a lot about Claire Weeks, although I know that a lot of people compare my approach to the ideas of Claire Weeks in as much as the second fear, the anxiety about feeling anxious. A lot of this channel is focused on second fear stuff. Yeah, not necessarily anxiety about my job or anxiety about my relationship, but anxiety about how anxious I am. And I think that for me was that when I read Claire Weeks' book, that was the thing that jumped out to me as, oh God, that's so reminiscent of the way I talk about it. Obviously Claire Weeks was ages before me, so the OG there. The only thing about Claire Weeks stuff that I don't necessarily agree with is there's a lot of labeling of the different disorders, in terms of how she's looking at it. And as I get that she's coming from a psychiatrist's point of view, so she would do that. But for me, it's like, I don't think the labels do us any favors. But she absolutely understood that the main issue with anxiety was us treating it like an illness and then getting anxious about feeling anxious. And that's why the whole message, if I really want to get me on my soapbox here, we need to get rid of this idea, this constantly labeling anxiety disorders. Sometimes people look at my stuff and they say, well, you're talking about just day-to-day anxiety though, aren't you? You're not talking about anxiety disorder, like generalized anxiety disorder. I'm like, no, the very fact that you define between the two is the problem. The fact that you draw a distinction between day-to-day anxiety and anxiety disorders is why anxiety gets to the point where somebody's going to label you with a disorder, because you're living in fear of being given that diagnosis and then being burdened with that forever or something like that. Everyone's anxiety response is transient. It is temporary. It moves from phase to phase, from moment to moment. We can really do without the labels. Also, thank you for all you do and been a help these past few months. You're very welcome, Des. You're very welcome. I'm really pleased that the videos are helping. Fatu, hi, I'm dealing with full body numbness. I can't feel myself breathing. It's scary. What can I do? I think what happens is this thing we were talking about again. When you say full body numbness, I'm guessing not to the point where you can't move. Not as in complete, like paralysis or something, because obviously, well, you've typed the question in, haven't I? Or at least not permanently. So I'm trying to equate it in my mind. Sorry. And you can't feel myself breathing. How often do we feel ourselves breathing? Again, I'm going to talk about hyperfixating on certain sensations. Yeah. It's like when people are constantly aware of their heartbeat or their pulse, and they know when their heartbeat skips a beat or something like that. Fatu, I think all you've got to concern yourself with is that you always will continue breathing. That's not a thing that you're just going to stop breathing. I mean, we'll stop breathing at some point. I get that. But the whole thing of, is anxiety and an issue I've got going to just stop me breathing? If, by the way, anyone watching this has any medical stuff, they're like, I think it might be a medical issue. My advice is always, hey, go see the doctor. Let the doctor put your mind at rest so that you can then happily conclude, right, okay, so it's just me. Somatization of symptoms is, I believe, what doctors refer to it as. where we fixate so much on a possible negative health effect that we imagine the symptoms so well that they become real to us. Now, I'm very wary of saying that because it sounds like I'm saying it's all in your head, but coming from somebody whose training is in hypnosis and hypnotherapy, trust me, all in your head is not meant as a dismissal of it. Yeah, it's like the old Dumbledore quote. What was it? Just of course it's all in your head, but why does that mean it isn't real? You know, it doesn't mean it isn't real or something like that. I've misquoted there, but you know what I mean? So it's probably only because you're monitoring this stuff that it feels troubling to you. That's what I would suggest. As long as you're comfortable that there's nothing medically wrong, then that is a very natural effect of fixating on certain sensations, is that you create them and amplify them. Yeah. I hope that makes sense. Christine, another one from the members area. Hello, Tim. Any tips on calming the mind while healing from my small surgery and the anticipation of waiting for results? I'm worrying and craving reassurance that I won't get. Exactly. This is the thing, isn't it? So good on you for getting that done, because we were talking about that on Wednesday, weren't we, in the members area. But what I would suggest here, so your mind is focusing on importance again. Let's go back to that theme. It's saying this is important because I don't want the results to come back negatively. But again, what have you actually got to do right now? Nothing. Yeah, you can't do anything about it. It's now with the doctors to do your test results. And if I remember, because Britt had one done recently, it's somewhere between 2 and 6 weeks, isn't it? So what do you want to do? Think about that for 2 to 6 weeks. And I know at the moment you've probably got like stitches in your face or something where they've taken a little bit of skin out and everything, and you're seeing it there, so it's reminding you about it. So I get that. But whilst I don't advocate distraction when it comes to anxiety, because it just has us feeling like distraction is necessary as a tool to kind of as a countermeasure to anxiety, as if anxiety is a problem. If we're talking about I find myself thinking about it, encourage your subconscious, encourage your mind to just put your thoughts where you would rather they go. So there's probably loads of things that you would be doing in your life from day to day if you weren't thinking about this thing. Yeah. Even if it's just thinking about other things that are more pleasant or more functional things that I need to focus on to get done, tomorrow or something like that. It's like, encourage your mind to recognize at the moment. Yeah. If you've got you're like a graphic equalizer. Am I being too old when I'm saying that? Yeah. But then Christine, I know you're a musician. So, you've got, different bands of graphic equalizer. And at the moment, what's going on with the skin sample is up here on your EQ. So that's what you're noticing. That's your most important thing. It's about recognizing that this can come down. Yeah, because as soon as this comes down below one of the other bars, then you'll focus on that instead. Yeah, so it's just recognizing that at the moment your crew are trying to get you to take action on something. And you know what action they want? They want a clean bill of health result. That's the action they want. So it doesn't matter how hard your crew push for that, they won't get that. Your subconscious will not get, as you know, it won't get that reassurance until it's time for that reassurance to be given. So encourage your subconscious to put your focus where is worthwhile for you. It's one of those weird sort of occasions where I'm like, yeah, you know what? You could deliberately just put your mind somewhere to distract yourself, enjoyable stuff. That might be my most practical advice there, But the other thing you might find as well is that when you do that and you notice that, a week in, 2 weeks in, the world hasn't ended, has it? Your subconscious might calm down about this when it's not in the immediacy of the moment, as in I've just had this done yesterday. Then inevitably, the shock wave dies down, and you naturally just start to find yourself focusing back on what you need to. And if you're in the members area, so if you're using the control system at all, then I would deliver that message straight to your subconscious with that. Okay. Des, you're saying, would love to hear your full take on Claire Weeks. She's been a big help to me. Yeah, I think absolutely. That to be fair, I don't want to misrepresent Claire Weeks' work because I'm not an expert on it. I read the book such a long time ago as well. But yeah, I think as well, I hear only good things about Claire Weeks, because it's like I'll do a lot of sessions with people, And they'll hang on, let me just put that up so people know what I'm answering. I'll do a lot of sessions with people and they'll mention certain approaches that haven't worked for them or certain things that haven't helped because obviously they've come to me. So the things haven't sorted them out. But whenever people have mentioned Claire Weeks, it's always been in a positive light, So I think, there's probably a lot of benefit from doing a deeper dive into Claire Weeks stuff. If I was the sort of channel that did like reviews or did sort of summaries of people's approaches, probably Claire Weeks would be one that I would do, isn't it? That's one that I think would be worth covering, but I'm not that sort of channel. I just talk about the stuff that I talk about with my clients, to be fair. Des, how do we join the members area? You need to be on a computer, I believe, and click the join button on my channel page. Oh, or there is a link in the description of the video, because I just realized I put a link to the members area in the description that just goes up automatically on all the videos. So I think you can find the link in the description of this video. Right. How are we doing here? Oh my God, we've got so many comments still to get through. And we've got 5 minutes. Right. Let me try and make my answers short. Sorry about this if they're going to be a bit short. Mia, good evening. I'm paralyzed by fear. I have chronic pain that triggers panic attacks. 2 years of suffering. I blame myself for an accident I couldn't help. Is there hope for me? How do we stop the obsession? Yes, there is absolutely hope. There's always hope. You never get to the point where you can't change, Hang on a second. Okay. Sorry, I got distracted there. Sorry. Right. Okay, Mia, there's always, absolutely always hope there, because change isn't just possible, it's inevitable. Yeah. For a start, you can deal with chronic pain. Even if your doctor signed you up and said, okay, this is the state of play now. Remember, pain is a registering of a damage in the mind. Yeah, the pain is registered in the mind, not in the body. So everything that we do in terms of controlling our thought processes can help you control chronic pain as well. So that's the first thing. So even if you consider chronic pain to be the issue, then absolutely. Now, triggering panic attacks. Right, let's try and stop talking about triggering panic attacks. Yeah, that panic attacks are not something that happens to you. Panic is something that your mind does when it feels in a fight or flight mode. Yeah. There's a bit of you deliberately instigating we are under threat panic response. And obviously what's going on here from what you're saying, and I say obviously, we only get a couple of sentences, don't we, to exchange ideas here. But is that you're fearing the pain so much that it's putting you into fight or flight. And now you're probably expecting the panic attack as well. So you're creating that imagining in your mind. First of all, and blaming yourself for an accident you couldn't help, that's not going to help either, because that means there's an emotional attachment to the pain. If you let go of the blame, if you let go of that idea that you're to blame, I guarantee you the pain issue will calm, the panic will die down, and you will start to feel better. Now, I say guarantee, but you know what I mean? It's like we see this a lot, and I'm trying to give a short answer to something that is not a short answer. Yeah. But I would, first of all, the panic is not going to damage you, is not going to hurt you. It will always pass. When you let go of the tension of that thought, of that idea, then any pain issues, any discomfort physically will die down, because tension conducts pain like water conducts electricity. Yeah, you just make it worse by being tense and worried about the panic that will ensue from any chronic pain. And secondly, blaming yourself for an accident you couldn't help. Let's stop doing that. Yeah, life will throw us shit. And yeah, you know what? There's this thing that happens. Our mind attempts to seize some kind of agency in any given moment. Okay, it says something bad happened and I want to be safe from it in the future. So what can I do? Oh, it must be something I did wrong. If I can say I did something wrong, then at least, even though, all I've got to do is learn the lesson and it won't happen again. But that's the thing about trauma, isn't it? We didn't see it coming. We couldn't have stopped it happening. Or even if we could have, we hadn't learned the lessons we needed to at the time to be able to. Yeah. So the very fact that It's your mind trying to stay safe from those things in the future. It's just creating, and blame is a way, is a strategy for that. But like you say, you beat yourself up, you just end up beaten. So resist the temptation to do that. Okay. Allow yourself to let go of that tension. That's what you got to do, I think. And then you'll start to experience less pain, as a result, less fear of the pain. And as a result, you won't be triggering panic. But I'd need to know a little bit more, Mia, if I'm honest, to be able to give you some real tangible advice here. And as with anyone, if you feel you want to go into anything one-to-one with me, I do one-to-one sessions. That's what I do for a living. There's contact details in the description as well. So if you feel you want to have one-to-one sessions with me, obviously it's not everyone's bag, it's not everyone's cup of tea to have one-to-one therapeutic work, but it is there. Just as a put it out there. I feel I'm gonna have to call this, because it's an hour in, and it's the first time we've had so many comments and I just haven't got anywhere near to finishing. So apologies. And I realize now Michael has put in about 15 versions of the same question. But thanks for that, Michael. But yeah, so look, I'm going to have to call it here, I'm afraid, everyone. But please join me next month. It's normally near the start of the month that I do these. Or if you want more advice, if you want more help ongoing, then have a look at the members area, because I do these lives literally every week. And we talk through issues, and we give some answers and some, help people get control of anxiety. Okay. Right. I'm going to wish you all a good month. If you're celebrating Christmas, have a happy Christmas. Or whatever you're celebrating, have a great holiday period, and have a lovely new year. And I suspect I am back the first Friday in January, but that will go up on the channel. So if you subscribe to the channel, by the way, then you'll see that come up when I put the live up. But yeah, have a good one, everyone. Always remember, be kind to your mind. I'll see you next time.